Good evening. My name is Kathleen Duffy. I'm a professor of physics here at Chestnut Hill College, as well as the director of our newly found Institute for Religion and Science. So in the name of our college president, Sister Carol Jean Vail, and in the name of our Institute's advisory committee, I would like to welcome you to the Sugarloaf campus of Chestnut Hill College and to the second in the Institute's Spring 2012 lecture series. We have another lecture here on April 12th, Dr. Ed Deviney, who's in the audience. Where are you, Ed? Yes, he'll be speaking on the topic Heaven and the Heavens, so again, combining science and religion. And then we're going to do replays of Peter's talk and Ed's talk. Peter will be talking at Cabrini College on the 16th of April, and Ed will be speaking at Pendle Hill, a Quaker retreat center in Wallingford, PA. And if you want to see what we're about, we have a website. I think you saw that on the first slide. Actually, if you go to the Chestnut Hill College website, all you have to do is look on the right-hand side, and we have our own little spot, Institute for Religion and Science. Also, we do have a sign-up sheet, so if you didn't receive any information about this lecture and you found out about it in the newspaper or from a friend, be sure to sign up because we'll be glad to send, we'll try not to spam you, but we'll send you notices every once in a while about what we're doing. And we're planning for next year, too, so you'll want to know what we're up to in the fall. So this evening, we're honored to have as our speaker Dr. Peter Dodson, a longtime friend of mine and a longtime participant in the dialogue between science and religion. Peter's well qualified to speak to us tonight. Since receiving his Ph.D. in earth sciences from Yale University in 1968, Peter has been working as a gross anatomist at the School of Veterinary Medicine and as a dinosaur paleontologist at the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences, both at the University of Pennsylvania. Peter also serves as a research associate at the Academy of Natural Sciences in Philadelphia. Peter has made several important contributions to the study of vertebrate paleontology. His fieldwork has taken him literally around the world, first to Montana, then to Dinosaur Provincial Park in Alberta, Canada, to Madagascar, to Egypt, to Argentina, and most recently to China. Along the way, he has discovered several dinosaurs, a new horned dinosaur and a diplodocoid. I had it down pat earlier. Sauropod. I'm not 5 years old. If I were 5 years old, I could do this. So they were both in Montana. And a gigantic sauropod in Egypt, and the basal Neoceratopsian in China. Peter believes that to date, only 29% of all dinosaurs have been found. So Peter, you still have a lot of work to do. Peter's work has been supported with grants from the National Science Foundation, the National Geographic Society, Pew Charitable Trusts, and the University of Pennsylvania Research Foundation. Recently, Peter has participated in the filming of a series of 6 high-quality National Geographic films on dinosaur biology in China. Peter is co-editor of the Dinosauria, author of the book The Horned Dinosaurs, as well as several children's books, one entitled An Alphabet of Dinosaurs. He's currently working on a book about the dinosaurs of China. In addition to all this, Peter has been quite active in the dialogue between science and religion. He has served on the governing board of the Meta-Nexus Institute for about 12 years and as the first president of its governing board. He's now a member of the advisory committee for our institute, and we're very grateful. Peter participates yearly in the Cosmos and Creation Conference held at Loyola University, Maryland, and has his own group of interested folks, some of whom are here, who meet weekly to discuss topics of religion and sometimes science and religion. He has also written numerous essays on the topic of religious belief and science. We're so pleased to have you with us this evening, Peter, and look forward to all that you have to share with us tonight, especially about the significance of fossils and faith in your own life. And so let us now welcome our faith-filled dinosaur hunter, Peter Dodson. You're welcome.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, everybody. It's a joy to be here. You know, Kathy and I are very dear friends. We've been friends for a long time, and so my topic tonight are two of the three things that I hold dearest to my heart. It's my fossils and my faith. The only other thing that can compete is my family. So those are the threefold supports of my life. So we'll jump right into the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs are not a hobby for me. I actually earned my daily bread as a professor of veterinary gross anatomy in the School of Veterinary Medicine at Penn. But my Ph.D. is in earth and environment, is in geology and paleontology, and it's what I do. So I've written various books and gone wonderful places around the world. These are places I've gone: Madagascar, Egypt, India, China, Japan, United States, Canada, Patagonia, of course Europe, but that's kind of ho-hum. And along with my students, these are the four kinds of dinosaurs that I've described. My first dinosaur was Avaceratops in 1986. This is a skeleton at the Academy of Natural Sciences downtown. Comes from Montana. In 2001, I worked with my students in Egypt, and we described a very large long-necked dinosaur, Paralititan. In 2003, back to Montana, we described Suasia. And in 2005, back to China, we named this dinosaur in 2005. So, new dinosaurs, something a little bit odd, something is not projecting there. I can't say why that is. All right, new dinosaurs are being found at an extraordinary rate around the world. And between 2006 and 2009, 92 new dinosaurs were found, bringing the total number of dinosaurs known to something like 625. And new dinosaurs are being described every year. Matter of fact, on their average of about one new dinosaur every 2 weeks. So it's perfectly extraordinary how much is going on. I recently discovered that of all the horned dinosaurs, now my own specialty is in horned dinosaurs, 50% of horned dinosaurs of the taxa that we recognize as valid have been described since 2003. 50%. And bearing in mind that Triceratops, the first well-known horned dinosaur, was described in 1889. So I wrote a book on horned dinosaurs in 1996, and 50%. It's almost to the point of discouraging. You got to run as fast as you can to stay right where you are. I mean, thank goodness for young people, because they have the brains to absorb all this. You know, it's starting to bounce off me. I mean, just amazing. But the important thing is that there are 6 countries in the world which account for about 3/4 of all dinosaurs. And the United States was #1 in the world until 2007. In that year, China surpassed the United States for the numbers of different kinds of dinosaurs, and quite frankly, China shot past the United States. The third country in the world is Argentina, and then the remaining 3 are Mongolia, Mongolia, Canada, and England. So those 6 countries, about 3/4 of all dinosaurs. Let's see. Oh, Andrea, help. Okay, and that's that slide. Well, these are just a group of dinosaurs described since in 1 year. All right, so where have I gone? I've gone to some wonderful places during my career. I started off in rather pedestrian fashion, at first in Canada, where I grew up, and in the western United States. In 1996, I went to Madagascar, which is really a very lovely place to work. So here we are. There's our camp cook. This woman. Okay, now we're. I'm not in control. All right. It's all right. So this is the camp kitchen. Charcoal burners for rice and beans, and that's what we ate. And there are a couple of our Malagasy students. Wonderful fossils there. This is a fossil of a small variety of long-necked plant eater. There's my student Kathy Forster. But the bonus here was not only the long-necked plant eater, but a couple of very interesting and subsequently very important fossil birds. One there and one up there. When you're digging dinosaur bones, you don't generally see birds, but there we did. This is a fossil that we excavated. We saw some vertebrae in the ground. There quite a bit of evidence on the ground. So we began to dig, and the first thing the vertebrae were clearly the vertebrae of a small meat-eating dinosaur. But the first bone we encountered was a very long thigh bone, and it was evident that it was the thigh bone of a plant eater, of a long neck. And so everyone was very disappointed, and we were trying to figure out how we could possibly convert this bone into a meat eater bone, into a theropod bone, and no way that we could. I mean, so we continued to dig in this direction, exposing bone. Then we hit this broad, flat bone, and pretty soon we discovered that it was the lower jaw of a meat eater, and continued finding bones scattered all over the ground here. This is the upper jaw that we dug out, all the teeth in place there. That's the nose region. The eye would have been right back there. It turned out to be an essentially complete skull scattered over the ground. It was probably immature. Oh yes, there's the right lower jaw. And there's the right upper jaw, the maxilla. And the left lower jaw happened to be in the spot where I was digging. So that's my contribution to the affair. Of course, I was digging through the ground in this direction, and I hit a little chip of bone, and of course it broke immediately. And I had, instead of throwing it away, I said, well, we'll just keep it here. And I kept on digging in this direction. I hit more bone, and then I hit a tooth, that great aha moment, a tooth. And so from the direction the tooth was pointed, I knew that if I dug in this direction, I would be working my way towards the front of a jaw. And sure enough, another tooth and another tooth and another tooth and another tooth. And I waited until I had that many teeth showing before I told the others, oh, look what I have. And there was more whooping and hollering. When we finished with it all, that was my jawbone. The quality of the bone preservation at this site was perfectly exquisite. There's the broken region right there, nicely patched together. I always say that without glue and plaster, there would be no paleontology, the paleontologist's best friend. So this is what the animal looked like, a magnificent skull named Majungasaurus atopus, the dome from Majunga. Really just a very beautiful meat-eating dinosaur skull. And we managed to get a cover in Science when we published that in 1998. So that was certainly one of the highlights of my career. Subsequently, there's the Majungasaurus. The name has changed now. It's now called Majungasaurus rather than Majungasaurus. There's a story there, but we won't get distracted. Other dinosaurs, and I should say that this project was based at Stony Brook University on Long Island. I was a guest in 1996. Unfortunately, I only went there the one season, but subsequently several PhDs came from this project. One was the long-necked plant eater, was named Rapetosaurus, and this very odd small meat-eating dinosaur was named Mechanized. As a matter of fact, it was named Mechanized Knopfleri after the rock singer Mark Knopfler. That's the way the young kids entertained themselves when we were digging. So, another place that I worked with great pleasure was Egypt, and it's a wonderful place. And again, we were in a situation where we had a television crew working with us for the Arts and Entertainment Network. So they were observing our work. They put together this book, and it was a 2-hour show called The Lost Dinosaurs of Egypt. Now, what is lost about the dinosaurs of Egypt? Before the First World War, a German paleontologist by the name of Stromer worked in Egypt. He was a very good scientist, found some important fossils, carried them back to Germany, described them in a series of exquisite illustrated monographs between 1915 and 1936. Stromer was never able to return to Egypt, and in 1944, an Allied bombing raid over Munich managed to drop a bomb on the Museum of Natural History, which burned to the ground. The target was actually the Nazi Party headquarters. So it was a very daring wartime raid. Unfortunately, it was a catastrophe for the museum. The museum burnt to the ground. All of the fossils were lost, and all that remains of them are a wonderful photographic and monographic record. The Egyptians themselves are not particularly interested in dinosaurs. They like old things, but for them, old means 5,000 years old, not 100 million years old. So the Egyptians did not collect fossils themselves, nor did they welcome outsiders. There was definitely a streak of xenophobia there. But we were able to go to Egypt in 2000, and we tried to look for more fossils. We worked at Bahariya Oasis in the Western Desert. This is a satellite photo, obviously. You can tell from the brown color that when we say desert, we mean desert. It is really desert. We can see the Nile River flowing northward into the Mediterranean. We can see the Nile Delta, and Cairo is right there at the head of the delta. So we were out in the Western Desert. Fortunately, it's only about 3.5 hours drive from Cairo on a nice paved road. So it is remote, and it's not remote. Oops, go back one. Oh yeah, so you do your tourist thing at Giza, and then you go out into the Western Desert. And this is what it looks like. There's a natural landform. That's not an artificial pyramid. That's a small mountain called Jebel El Dist. And there I am working with Egyptian colleagues, showing them how to swing the pickaxe. And first fossil we found was at first mysterious to us. Matter of fact, it wasn't until we brought it back to Philadelphia and began studying it that it took us about 6 months to figure out what on earth it was. It was clearly a skull. The bones were the size of a dinosaur skull, but it was no dinosaur at all. It turned out to be a giant coelacanth fish, a fish that was something like 13 feet long. So it was a very large fish. Coelacanths are famous as living fossils, once thought extinct, now known to be alive. But they disappeared from the fossil record not long after this gigantic fish. But we didn't go to Egypt for fishes. We went there for dinosaurs. I do have a student, Barbara Grandstaff, who did her Ph.D. on this and another coelacanth skull that we collected. So for 3 weeks, we went churning around in the desert, climbing hills and looking at all sorts of scenic places for fossils. And we were having for a target of dinosaurs, we were having a really hard time. But finally, in the middle of the bald plain, we found some rocks sticking out of the ground. We hired a couple of Egyptian day laborers to work with us. We had to because we had to dig in the flat ground. It's hard work. We had to negotiate wages with them. They wanted $2 a day to work, which we thought was outrageous. So we negotiated hard and got them up to $6 a day. and they worked hard for that. But eventually we found we were very much rewarded. This was a bone of fairly substantial dimensions. Matter of fact, when we were digging this, we thought when we started digging, only a little corner was exposed. And we thought that this edge was one bone, and we thought this other edge was another bone. And we were astonished when they connected in the middle, and it was all a single bone of very considerable size. There's the bone jacketed up. There's a rare picture of me with plaster on my hands. I don't usually like to get my hands dirty. I let the young ones do that. And there's the favored mode of transportation in the oasis. The oasis is called Bawidi, and you can see all the date palms in the background. This is a Chestnut Hill graduate, Patty Kane Vanny, who was with us on that day. Nice fiery Egyptian sunset. We brought the bone back to Philadelphia, and that is how big it was. This is at the Academy of Natural Sciences. It was a tremendously large bone. It was a humerus, an upper arm bone, and it's 5 feet 7 inches high. It's a very large bone. It's not the largest dinosaur humerus ever found. At the time we described it, it was the second largest. It's now the third largest. But anyway, you cut it. This turns out to be a tremendously large animal. We gave it the name Paralotitan stromeri, meaning Stromer's giant from the swamps. Well, after working these exotic places, I didn't suppose that I would return to the United States to work. But lo and behold, a veterinary colleague of mine was out in Wyoming visiting his daughter and son-in-law, riding the range, saw some bones sticking out of the ground, got off his horse, dug them out with his hunting knife, and brought them back to me and said, "Well, Peter, what do you think?" I said, "Well, Bill, looks interesting to me." You think we should go out? Yeah, I think we should go out and have a look-see. And we did, and it was actually quite good. There I am with my students, and this is after just a fairly short amount of excavation. And we uncovered this humerus, this shoulder blade, this rib, which is about 54 inches long. We found, once again, a significant part of a dinosaur. I should say, in the case of Paralotitan, we only found about 15% of the animal. We found significantly more of this animal. And these are the parts in red are the parts we recovered. A very good partial skull. Subsequently, a lower jaw has been found. Every time you dig, you hope in your heart of hearts that it's going to be a complete animal, but it very rarely is. And in my entire career, I've only found 2 substantially complete and articulated specimens. I found many partial specimens, and I've found quite literally thousands of dinosaur teeth, something like 5,000 dinosaur teeth. But as far as nameable specimens, 4, that's new specimens, and articulated skeletons, only 2. So just to give you a sense of proportion. So Jerry Harris did his PhD in this animal, published in 2004, and we called it Suuasia emiliae. And the name Suuasia comes from the Crow-Indian language, and it means ancient thunder. All children know that Brontosaurus means thunder reptile, but we don't use the name Brontosaurus anymore because it's the same dinosaur as Apatosaurus. But in the Crow-Indian language, Suuasia means ancient thunder, so it's our tribute to Brontosaurus. The most exciting chapter of my recent life is China. I went to a meeting in Beijing in 1995, my first trip to China, and there we go. I met this young gentleman there. I was very impressed with him, and so I invited Yu Hailu to come to Philadelphia and study with me, which he did. He did a fine job. He completed his PhD in 2002, and then he returned to China. And first thing he did on returning to China was he named a dinosaur after me. He named Magnirostrus dodsoni, which means Dodson's big nose. But more to the point, since then, he invited me to come to China with him and study dinosaurs with him. So I've had 2 PhDs now, subsequent PhDs, which he's helped co-supervise. And I'm taking 2 undergraduates to China with me this summer, and so China has been just very productive to me. The really endearing thing about China is that they have such a culture of respect for their elders. And so every year I go back and I'm a little grayer and fewer hairs on my head, and they bow a little deeper. And it's very endearing, really is. It really is. So one of the dinosaurs we named in 2005 is this dinosaur. It's a primitive horned dinosaur, in a very broad sense, a precursor of Triceratops. And I said it's very old and it's very ugly, but let's name it after my wife. And so my wife's name is Dawn, and of course in Latin that's Aurora, so Aurora ceratops. And despite my saying that, she really does like it. A couple of years ago, I did go to China with National Geographic. The resulting program was not very flattering for me. It's called CSI Jurassic. I was filming there for 2.5 weeks, but I was barely on screen for 2.5 minutes. So I can't figure that one out, but that's all right. They're very entertaining programs. So we flew to Shandong and went to a beautiful dinosaur quarry. There's Qingdao. We made sure we drank some Qingdao beer when we were in Qingdao. We went to Zhucheng, the site of an absolutely wondrous dinosaur quarry. It's everything we do well in China, they do better as far as dinosaurs go. So we have Dinosaur National Monument with a beautiful quarry, which is 150 feet long. Well, the quarry there is about 700 feet long, and it's just filled with dinosaurs. There's my great colleague, Phil Manning from University of Manchester, standing next to some of the bones. And so then we flew to Lanzhou and saw some cool stuff there. There's some set of dinosaur footprints of enormous size discovered by my good friend and colleague Li Daqing. We took a trip on the Yellow River and went to a beautiful fossil footprint site. Very, very scenic area. There's Phil and me standing in front of a dinosaur track site. Those are dinosaur footprints there and there. That's a dinosaur footprint. They go off in that direction. A beautiful, beautiful site. we came back along the Yellow River at sunset. One of the animals that comes from Lanzhou, from Gansu, is this gigantic, is plant-eating dinosaur with gigantic teeth, which was named Landrosaurus in honor of the capital city of China. This plant-eating dinosaur has the largest teeth of any plant-eating dinosaur ever found. It's just enormous. They're the size of bananas. They're really rather rhinoceros-like teeth. Mostly herbivorous dinosaurs have small and delicate teeth, but these are large and coarse and numerous. Landrosaurus is magnidense, big-toothed Landrosaurus is a plant eater, an iguanodont. There's the site of a sauropod. There's Hailu, my colleague. There's Daching, my very good friend. And this is in the United States, we tend to be very mechanized in our collecting. You know, use helicopters and bulldozers and tractors and winches and all that sort of thing. In China, they do it with pure brawn. Wonderful bird site in fossil bird site in northwestern China called Changma. Very beautiful spot. I just love the spot. This is what the Shire must surely look like. You know, these beautiful fields and beautiful children and golden grain and sheep and pigs and donkeys and surrounded by snow-capped mountains that it's always green and verdant. It's almost Shangri-La, let's face it. Really pretty, beautiful children, very gorgeous children. And here's Hailu and my student Matt. That's a fossil bird which the quarry workers have just discovered. That's the wing of a fossil bird. We spit a lot of rocks and find some extraordinary fossils there. Just really, really beautiful fossils. So this is one of our most exciting localities. It looks like a Thanksgiving dinner, except or these are more Cornish hens than butterball turkeys. They're quite small, delicate, but beautiful. This is what the skeleton looks like. And there's an artist's reconstruction of Gansus. So China just offers so much. I love going to China. It's a very colorful country, very beautiful country. I've even learned a few rudiments of Chinese. So I can speak to the young children in Chinese. You know, I once asked that girl we saw, the older girl, I asked her, I said to her, "Ni shi yi sheng ma?" And she said, "Wo bu shi yi sheng." So I asked her if she was a doctor, and she said, "No, I'm not a doctor." It was a nonsense thing, but she understood me. That was the thrilling part. But so, you know, I go to China's a colorful country, and I go there every summer, and I just have the greatest time. So that's sort of the end of my the dinosaur phase of the talk. The next part of the talk is not dinosaur. It's the God part of the talk, and God doesn't illustrate so nicely as dinosaurs do. And I have to issue a fair warning. I'm practicing theology without a license, because I really am a scientist, but as a professing Christian. So I'm a geologist, a paleontologist, an anatomist, an evolutionary biologist, and I'm also a deeply committed Christian. And for some people, this is an oxymoron. How can you believe in evolution and believe in God? Well, the great thing is we don't have to make a choice. We don't have to make a choice. Evolution is a process, and God is an agent. They're incommensurate, as our friend John Lennox say. We don't have to, you know, who invented the internal combustion engine? Do we have to choose between spark plugs and carburetors and Henry Ford? No, they're two different things. One is a mechanism, and the other is an agent. So. This is my protagonist, Will Provine. I have to thank Will Provine because he changed my life. I had never, as a lifelong Roman Catholic, because I never saw a conflict between science and faith, I never explicitly tried to put the two together. But Will Provine is somebody whom I would call an evangelical atheist. And I encountered him in Philadelphia in 1988. And he said, this is what evolutionary biology teaches. There is no God. There is no soul. There is no life after death. There is no such thing as free will. He said, we make hundreds of decisions every day, but every decision we make is a product either of our genes or of our environment. There is nothing else. And I have to say that I was flabbergasted. And then just to keep the nails pounding in the coffin, a scientist who believes in God is a hypocrite. You must check your brains at the back of the church. I thought, wow, that's really something. When I first encountered him, I really didn't have the vocabulary to even begin to address these issues. I now know that this was an expression not of science. His statements, whether they're true or false, are not scientific statements, but they are statements of a philosophy which is called scientific naturalism or scientism, which maintains that scientific knowledge is the only valid form of knowledge. It was Bertrand Russell who said that if we can't know anything which cannot be known scientifically, we are not able to know. So all knowledge is scientific knowledge. Now, how would you prove that? How would you prove that? That is a philosophical statement. It's a philosophical a priori, and I'd have to say it does not respect the limits of science, and those limits of science are very many. Today, there are many people, Will Provine was the first one I encountered, but there are many people preaching that message today. Daniel Dennett, Richard Dawkins, Carl Sagan, the late Carl Sagan, Christopher Hitchens, so on and so forth. There's a long list of people. Well, there's this gentleman named Charles Darwin who published The Origin of the Species in 1859. He drew on many forms of knowledge to support his theory of evolution by natural selection. Of course, I'm excited that he made contributions to paleontology. He recognized the unique roles that paleontology had to offer to evolutionary thought. So he said at the end, there's grandeur in this view of life with its several powers having been originally breathed by the Creator into a few forms or into one, and that whilst this fixed law of gravity from so simple a beginning, endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful have been and are being evolved. A beautiful poetic statement, but not an irreligious statement. Not an irreligious statement. So evolution does not disprove the existence of God and does not necessitate atheism. And Darwin, of course, is very explicit that he never embraced atheism. He said in his autobiography, even in my darkest moments, he was never tempted to be an atheist. And indeed, he was actually criticized by his rival, Sir Richard Owen, as being too much of a creationist. Now we raise the questions, could it actually be that evolution is Darwin's gift to theology? Michael Ruse asked the question, can a Darwinian be a Christian? A very scholarly book, and the answer is absolutely yes. So there are a lot of scientists with quite naive views about the nature of religion. First of all is the fact that 40% of all scientists are religious believers. They are everywhere, and and possibly increasing in numbers. I don't know, but I'm certainly becoming increasingly aware of people I didn't know were religious, are religious. I pointed out to our undergraduates there that at Penn that there are religious believers in every academic department with which I've been associated at Penn. So the woods are full of them. Religion is not going to go away. Religion offers something that science cannot hope to offer. Science doesn't tell us how to lead our lives. Science doesn't offer us it doesn't offer us comfort when we're faced with the ultimate fate that we will all face. The role of religion cannot be touched by science. The scientists have of the stripe of Dawkins and his friends have been predicting the disappearance of religion ever since the Enlightenment. Guess what? It has been repeated, it has been falsified repeatedly. Theologians refer to this as the Disney World theory of religion, the prediction that it will go away, because it's not going away. As evolutionary biologist and an atheist, E.O. Wilson notes, religion is the most powerful and complex force in human nature. It's a cultural, cross-cultural, transcultural universal. You know, all peoples on earth are afflicted with the religion. And in evolutionary terms, evolutionary biologists, evolutionary psychologists look for what the adaptive value is. It suggests that it promotes group cohesion or promotes survival. Who knows? Our colleague and friend Andy Newberg is a neurotheologian, and he studies the activity of the brain in religious experience. And of course, it's hardly a surprise that religious experience takes place in the brain, but that doesn't. We know exactly the centers of the brain that light up during prayer or meditation. Does that mean, does it follow from that religious experience is not authentic contact with God? No, probably not. We know the centers of the brain that light up when we see a hamburger or smell bread cooking in the oven. That doesn't mean those are illusory phenomenon. You know, it's hardly a surprise that religious experience takes place in the brain. Do we expect it to be in the elbow or the big toe? Probably not. Christianity is not anti-science, and ancient thoughts, particularly those involving, Aristotle, for example, thought in terms of eternal but unchanged essences, and pantheism, seeing God or gods throughout all of nature is not a good substrate for investigation. How do you dig in the earth if you were disturbing the gods? It's not the right substrate. So the Judeo-Christianity sees God the Creator as separate from creation, which is essential for science to develop. We see that nature is orderly and rational, reflecting the mind of the Creator. So the scientist, in studying nature, studies the orderliness, which is an expression of God's mind. This religious understanding of nature is essential for science to develop, and it did not and could not develop in cultures that did not possess such a mindset. Seeing history is linear and not trapped in eternal cycles, All these things are necessary for science to develop because it is a reflection of the way the world actually is. Until the Enlightenment, virtually all scientists were persons of faith, and the act of doing science was essentially an act of worship, of praising God. Dawkins likes to say the problem with religious people is they're satisfied with too little. They're satisfied with the surface of things. Well, they're satisfied with not knowing. Well, not at all. Any knowledge of the history of science shows that religious people were very curious about the structure of the natural world. Sir Isaac Newton saw himself as a theologian. We think of him as a mathematician and a physicist, but his writings in and rather arcane theology were 10 times as voluminous, huge writings in theology. So to see him cast as a scientist would be a great surprise to him. Of course, St. Augustine told us that the purpose of the Bible is to tell us how to go to heaven, not how the heavens go. And Thomas Aquinas saw God working through secondary causes, which creates a world with its own ordering and process. Isn't this a remarkable thing? This is the antithesis of creationism, where in creationism it postulates God doing everything all the time, whereas in an orderly universe with orderly laws that science studies, the world creates itself. So rationality, far from Christians being irrational, rationality is the highly prized character of Christian thought. Galileo talked about the two books, the book of Revelation and the scriptures, and the book of nature, which we study. Francis Bacon, the same thing. Western scientists were not only religious believers, but religiously motivated by those beliefs until the middle of the 19th century. And many scientists today, including the director, Francis Collins, director of the Human Genome Project, are devoutly Christian. One of my scientific heroes is John Polkinghorne, who is a physicist at Cambridge who walked away from the physics laboratory at age 43 and took Anglican holy orders, and has ever since been a beautiful writer, very clear writer on science and theology. The universe might have been a disorderly chaos rather than an orderly cosmos, or it might have had a rationality that was inaccessible to us. There's a congruence between our minds and the universe, between the rationality experienced within and the rationality observed without. Such a reason is provided by the rationality of the Creator. Stephen Jay Gould said, "Either half of my colleagues are either enormously stupid, or else the science of Darwinism is fully compatible with conventional religious beliefs and equally compatible with atheism." Richard Feynman says, "Scientific knowledge is a body of statements of varying degrees of certainty, some of them most unsure, some of them nearly sure, but none is absolutely certain. Science does not give us absolute truth. All scientific statements are provisional statements." So where does the confidence of atheism come? It seems to me that humility is the only appropriate posture. The idea that there's an inherent conflict between science and faith was especially rife during the late 19th century, especially J.W. Draper and A.D. White, writing books with lurid titles, "The Warfare of Science with Theology and Christendom." These are scurrilous books. They're not good scholarship. They perpetuate fraudulent myths, such as that it is a tenet of Christianity that the earth is flat. Nothing of the sort. Bede the Venerable knew very well in 700 A.D. that the Earth was round. Venerable Bede had a better explanation for the tides than Galileo did. Galileo got the tides wrong. One of our great heroes in science and theology is our good friend Pierre de Chardon, who was a very distinguished geologist and paleontologist. Spent much of his career in China and described many fossils. The Institute for Vertebrate Paleontology and Paleoanthropology in Beijing is packed with fossils that he's described, and many fossils many important fossils are named after him. But he also had sublime ideas about the religious course of evolution. So John Haught from Georgetown, a wonderful theologian, a very fine textbook on science and theology, and it was he that decided that postulated that evolution was Darwin's gift to theology, and he constantly chides scientists for being satisfied with a literal reading of the biological record. How do we know that the DNA sequence is not just the grammar, that he sees layer after layer of profound, the sacred depths of nature is a phrase that Ursula Goodenough used. So one of the ideas, the evolutionary ideas, so what is the point about evolution in creation? Well, it's simply this, that God, we are told in Genesis that on the sixth day, God saw what he had done and saw that it was very good. God saw that it was very good. God did not see that it was perfect. And all we have to do to know that the creation is imperfect is by pick up the newspaper every morning. And we see, as Chesterton said, original sin is the one doctrine for which we see evidence in the daily newspaper. So there's a problem with perfection, and the problem with perfection is that it is static and unchanging. How do you improve on perfection? You don't improve on perfection. It's static. So rather, evolution, we hope, is a process of an improvement. So God's infinite love lifts creation continuously, and that change under God's love is what we call evolution. God gives inexhaustible depth to creation, but both creationism and scientism are the result of a superficial reading of nature. How can truth evolve from nature? Can the pure desire to know the truth arise from the evolutionary process? Darwin had his doubts. Darwin said, the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of a man's mind, which have been developed from the mind of lower animals, are of any value or are all trustworthy. Would anybody trust the convictions of a monkey's mind, if indeed there are any convictions there at all? And Richard Rorty said, the idea that one species of organism, unlike all others, oriented not only towards the truth, towards its own increased prosperity, but towards truth, is as un-Darwinian as the idea that every human being has its own built-in moral compass. You know, where does the search for truth and goodness come from? How could natural selection produce it? It's a very open question. So most Christians are not creationists. Creationists are people that read the Bible literally. But of course, the first question you can ask when you hear a Bible thumper with a southern accent is whether he's really reading the scriptures in Hebrew or not. As they said years ago in the Tennessee legislature, if English was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for us. So creationists tend to pretend to find a comprehensive scientific account within the framework of 6,000 years of biblical time, which clearly didn't leave enough time for evolution. So evolutionary thought to creationists is very suspect, but they don't worry about meteorology. But do you turn to the Bible to find meteorology or quantum mechanics? I mean, the point is that why is only evolution a problem? Why are the other sciences untouched? Well, if we look at a little closer at the Bible, we see that only 200 species of animals are named in the Bible, and 50 kinds of birds versus nearly 10,000 species today. 130 species of plants are named in the Bible. Only about 4% of the plants living in the Holy Land. So we know that the science, that the Bible is not a scientific treatise, and should not be treated as such. It's ridiculous to think that. Galileo is the one that pointed out that the Bible only mentions one planet. It's a planet which is in our evening sky now and very bright. It's Venus. So Galileo pointed out that the Bible contains only what is necessary for our salvation. And the other planets are not necessary for our salvation. So it's up to us to use the brains God gave us. So I recommend reading the Bible, knowing what's in it. Darwin certainly knew his Bible, and Gould always quoted the Bible, and it's certainly the foundational document of Western civilization. Well, there's some very interesting things we find in there. For example, how many accounts of creation are there in the Bible? Just one? And the answer is no, there are many, many, many accounts of creation in the Bible. It's a major concern which goes throughout the Bible. So Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 are two completely different accounts written 400 years apart. They even use a different vocabulary for the sacred name. In Genesis 1, Adam and Eve are created on the sixth day. In Genesis 2, they're created on the first day. Well, which is it? Or are we missing the point? So through the Psalms, Job, Proverbs, Isaiah, John, in the beginning was the Word, many, many different accounts of creation. So don't ever let anybody talk about the biblical account of creation. So one of my favorite lines is from Psalm 33, verse 4. The works of the Lord are trustworthy. And this tells me that as a scientist, I'm studying the works of the Lord. I'm studying my fossils, my dinosaurs, and I'm not being deceived. These were not things placed in the rocks by the devil to the peril of my soul. These are the works of the Lord, and they are trustworthy. We know in Romans chapter 1, verse 20, we know the Creator through the works of creation. Second book letter of Peter, chapter 3, verse 8, 1,000 years is as a day to the Lord, and a day is as 1,000 years. So the first day of creation, the second day of creation, third, forget it. That's not what it's telling us. And we see a similar thing in Psalm 90. So God is not deceitful. God is not deceitful. And dinosaurs are just as much part of creation as humans are. So there's a wonderful literature now, and it's just expanding. I can't even keep up with it anymore, about scientists who have written about their religious faith. This is Owen Gingerich is an astronomer at Harvard. Francis Collin Olney, the director of the Human Genome Project. Well, he's now director of the NIH. Actually, genome's over with. Joan Roughgarden is an ecologist at Stanford. Stephen Godfrey is a paleontologist in Maryland. I've just read this book, a beautiful book by Kenneth Olson, who is a retired Lutheran pastor from Montana. It's just reflections on dinosaurs, galaxies, and God. Reverend Olson is a wonderful fossil collector, and his summer vacations, he always goes out into the Badlands. He's found two colossal skulls of the plant-eating dinosaur Torosaurus, two of the largest skulls, dinosaur skulls ever found, and he donated them to the Museum of the Rockies. So he likes dirt under his fingernails, and he's an amateur astronomer. He loves taking his telescope out and watching the stars. But he's written just the greatest book on science and faith, with plenty of time out for poetry. He is the one that pointed out to me a number of years ago, said about biblical literalism. So Psalm 98 says, "The rivers clap their hands and the hills ring out their joy." What does that mean? If you try to interpret that literally, it's nonsense. It's poetry. And so what we charge is that literalists are people who don't understand poetry. And there's wonderful poetry in the Bible. Reverend Olson points out that all scientists are part-time scientists, but full-time human beings. So it's that other dimension of our lives, which is so important. I've just gotten this book. I just learned about this morning in email correspondence. It just came out last week from Cambridge University Press. Another Evolution and Belief, Confessions of a Religious Paleontologist. I put in my order from Amazon. So there's such an avalanche, I just can't keep up, which is very happy situation. Here's Francisco Ayala, member of the National Academy of Science. He also makes plenty of room for, feels that not only is science compatible with religious belief, he thinks that, he points out that as successful it is and as universally encompassing as its subject is, a scientific view of the world is hopelessly incomplete. Hopelessly incomplete. So what then of dinosaurs? I think that dinosaurs were one of the jewels of creation. God loved dinosaurs. They lived for 160 million years. God loved dinosaurs. They are just as much a part of creation as you or I. So those rambling thoughts, we'll leave it at that.
And I'm sure some of you might have some comments or questions. If anyone has, we'll take a few of those. Yes, the gentleman in the back. And then, yes,
in the back. Yes. Yes, you're in the back. You are. We trust you're a gentleman.
That's no, creation isn't that worthy or trustworthy. Some of the findings coming from particle physics are interesting. I mean, they found with this new hadron particle accelerator that there's this, whatever it is, this muon or rayon or something that sort of winks in and out of existence. And they've called it the God particle, suggesting that they finally figured out how God pulled off the creation ex nihilo. What do you think of that?
I don't have thoughts about that. I would defer. I know two physicists in this room, and Kathy, would you care to comment, or Ed? I mean, it is fashionable these days to speak about. I think even Stephen Hawking is claiming that we now understand how to get something out of nothing. But my understanding is that the nothing of the cosmologist and the astrophysicist is a very different matter from the nothingness of philosophy. That if you have energy, then it's easily convertible into to matter. But this highly charged state is not equivalent to nothing. Ed?
Thanks. The particle that you were referring to is called the Higgs particle, and in unified theories of particle physics, it's the particle that gives things mass. But it's just part of the story. So it gets to your point about whether things come from nothing or not, and physically speaking, or astrophysically speaking, what nothing is. And then it gets to the point of causes, as you so eloquently said.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Ed. Thanks for the question. Yes, sir.
One of the things that deeply disturbed believers just after Darwin was the realization that most of the species that ever existed on the earth are extinct. I mean, and not only species, but whole orders and family and genera. Darwin called it an infinity of extinctions. That really shocked people who are used to believing, who had read the New Testament and thought Jesus says, not a sparrow falls without your heavenly Father knowing about it or willing it. Any thoughts on that? It really shook people up just after Darwin was published.
Well, it's true. Extinction was seemed to be a big challenge. There are a lot of big challenges to when religious-minded people began to look at the natural world. That was the problem that Galileo ran into. Aristotelian philosophy was dominant in Europe during the Renaissance, and Aristotle had the idea that the heavens were immutable, eternal and immutable, and Galileo put his telescope out there and found that things were not so, and that sunspots, for example, were a big embarrassment. It wasn't so much an embarrassment to the church as it was an embarrassment to Aristotelian philosophy. But again, you have to go out and encounter the world. You may recollect that one of the motivations for sending the Jefferson charged the Lewis and Clark expeditions to explore the unknown Western territories, and one of the things they were specifically looking for was remains of giant elephants and ground sloths and animals that were known to have lived in prior times. Were they still alive? Because again, extinction was the problem. So we have a tidy understanding of the way we think things are, and then we go out and encounter the world. So I don't see that the problem of extinction is more or less problematic than the problem of astronomical activities. So it speaks of ongoing creation. So we've had to change our ideas. We have to look at the world. The world is contingent. It unfolds before us. It's not like a scholastic system where we infer the way things are and expect to find them that way. So it's an empirical system. So it's part of the learning process, and going back and rereading and saying, well, I guess we thought it was this way, but it's actually that way, and so we have to accommodate our thought. So just as we've accommodated the dynamism of the heavens, and as we've accommodated the thought that the observation that the Earth goes around the sun, so too we have to accommodate the fact of extinction. I know that fundamentalists or literalists believe that there was no that no animals died prior to the fall of Adam and Eve. So they have no thinking thusly. They have no ability to comprehend the fossil record. The fossil record shows us that is not so. So the death referred to must be spiritual death, not biological death. So, in the back.
Thank you. Mine's kind of a on the side issue, but I would really like to know if you have any input to it. There is a paleontologist named David.
It's hard to hear. If it's on, is it on? Yes.
Okay. Oh. His name is Ross, and I think he teaches at Liberty Universities or one of those.
Yes.
Yes, you're familiar with him.
Yes.
Yes. Could you, I understand he's a young world paleontologist, and he has done some, from what I read, considerable publications in some nice places, but he is a young world creationist. What are your thoughts about him?
I've met, I think his name is Marcus Ross. He did his PhD at University of Rhode Island with my friend David Festovsky. He studies marine reptiles, and he did a good thesis. I mean, so he's well trained, and he's made some significant publications on these animals. So there's nothing wrong with the science he has done as science, but he certainly chooses not to put his animals in an evolutionary context. So I suppose you could say he's analyzing them as if they lived in a single time plane and were a result of direct creation. Now, I suppose it would be like somewhat equivalent to studying the anatomy of a horse or a dog or something like that, things that I do all the time in my teaching, but without trying to infer any relationships among them. So he's able to do that kind of science, but he just carefully avoids the other. So it's a modus operandi. I find it hard to understand. I don't understand it, but that's what he does. And his credentials as far as marine reptiles go are quite legitimate.
Thank you very much. Can I get, Christopher Hitchens' book, the subtitle of his was Religion Poisons Everything.
Yes.
And it seems to me that that's really one of the great problems that we deal with, because it's not belief in God or the reality of that dimension, but somehow religion steps in and totally distorts so much of what we are seeing in terms of the science part of it. And a real question is the whole thing on original sin.
Yeah.
You mentioned it. In reality, many theologians, if not most theologians today, are saying there really was never an original sin. It's a symbolic thing, and it has nothing to do with religious stuff. But in reality, the religious communities are still pushing ideas that really should not be incompatible with science. I mean, that's the problem, I think very strongly.
Well, that's absolutely true. And all I would say to you is that if we believe in evolution, that things are changing. And so things that we taught, many of us are old enough that we were taught things in catechism class that curl our hair to think about today. So there is gradual. We are capable of evolving, and we are slowly evolving.
Can I just say,
yes.
This is going to be terrible. Please don't stop. But if you take the concept of infallibility, quote unquote, and it says nothing can change, then in reality, it's a real struggle theologically to come up with how do we really look at it. The ordination of men, all these things which are not necessarily science, but really the theology to stop thinking in those directions. And it's going to be 100 years before we ever see any change to it.
Well, there's a wonderful bumper sticker that said that we can think of how to paraphrase it, but it said, "When the people lead, the leaders will follow," and so yeah, of course we'll all be dead, but that's we evolve. Evolution is not necessarily a rapid process, so please be patient.
Thank you, Peter.
Lakshmi.
Thank you, Peter. I never knew that you were so staunch religious and also scientific. I was so impressed. It reminds me of Michael, my husband.
Of Michael, of course.
Mine is mostly scientific.
Yes.
Do you have any DNA extracts from the dinosaurs?
Yes. That's a wonderful question to ask. The answer is almost certainly no. Dinosaur DNA, for the moment, is sort of like the cold fusion of paleontology. About 10 years ago, there was intense interest in finding dinosaur DNA, and the claims have mainly been, have not, so to speak, held water. Personally, I don't understand these matters very well, but I tend to be skeptical that we'll ever get too far with it. But there are reports of proteins and organometallic residues, and we're skirting around it. So there certainly is a science of organic paleobiology. So we're going to know more now. Whether we'll ever get to the DNA stage or not, I'm doubtful, but you would probably know better than I.
You have Jurassic Park with eggs, dinosaur eggs.
No, it's a wonderful story. If you don't believe everything you read.
I like this picture. God created man in his image. Peter Dodson created dinosaur in human image.
And that's right.
Thank you.
Yes.
I don't have to respond to this, but I was interested in the extinction question and the infallibility and even the Liberty University. And what I'm thinking is what role fear plays in what we close down on. I mean, the Victorians were really afraid that extinction meant something personal to them. I mean, Tennyson, we did that this semester, so careful of the type, not even careful of the type, she seems. God loved the dinosaurs, but he let them go. And I think that it's interesting to me that when religion and science try to dialogue with each other, where's the role of fear? And where does fear close us down? I mean, I think, where do we want to stay in the past, and where does fear close us down? And I think sometimes we think it's truth that we're defending when we're really unconsciously we're defending our fears or something that's related to them. Does that make sense to you? That was my speech asking you if it made sense. See, I want you to validate me.
Well, it's something to ponder. I'll ponder it.
Hi, Peter. I was just sitting here wondering, have you ever taken a moment yourself and reflected why you're thinking about these issues? I assume the human species is the only species that really wonders about a creator, and we're a very minor component of the total number of species on this earth. So I'm just curious how you kind of evolved yourself into this mode and this topic.
Well, certainly at a personal level, I mean, it involves I'm quite literally, my encounter with Will Provine was the one that made me turn in on myself and question the foundations of my lifelong thinking. So I had always been an evolutionary biologist and paleontologist, always a practicing Christian, and were they really in conflict, or how did they reinforce each other? There's a lot of sociology going on here. I mean, when I say that Will Provine and his like are evangelical, I mean, they're really trying to make the case that there's no room in the modern world for people trying to walk in both camps. He accused me of being a dreaded compatibilist. A compatibilist, that was the dirtiest word he could think of, So it was really that personal goad that got me going, and within I started finding these other people, and then just if from a religious perspective, there's no such thing as coincidence. Coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. We say, well, through a student that I encountered at the Penn Newman Center, had a friend at Georgetown University who was Tom King, and she talked of Tom King to me. She talked me to Tom King. Tom King invited me to go to Cosmos in Baltimore. I went to this wonderful Cosmos and Creation meeting at Loyola College in Baltimore. I met this character, and she and I have been partners in in crime, both in this country and in China, together. So, you know, one thing leads to another. Oh, the gene for religious. Oh, yeah, there's a gene for this and there's a gene for that. You know, sounds like biological reductionism for me. I'll put in a little footnote here, and that's let's just hypothetically say there were a gene for belief in God. What I would then say is that just because there's a gene for belief in God, enabling us, facilitating our ability to connect with God, that wouldn't mean God doesn't exist. I mean, we can give a perfectly valid explanation for an evolutionary explanation for why my mother loves me. But does that mean my mother doesn't love me? I mean, there's this silly idea that if you can explain something, it doesn't exist or it's not valid. And by the same thinking, that hamburger that I'm smelling that's lighting up my cerebrum, we can explain it so it doesn't exist. You know, I can explain the trajectory of the bus coming down Germantown Avenue, and including the probable time of impact and the kinetic energy that will be transferred to my body. But making that calculation doesn't make that bus cease to exist. You know, so the idea that scientific explanation eliminates the phenomenon is quite absurd.
I really enjoyed your talk. Thank you so much, Peter. And my question surrounds the idea that Christians believe that God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son. So the evidence of God's love in this sense is the coming of Jesus.
Yes.
And I notice you have a lot of emphasis on God loves the dinosaurs, which is terrific from your point of view of the work you do combined with theology. But I would want to hear more from you about the sense in which God loves the dinosaurs. What's the evidence for that? You suggested longevity, which in a way I understand. But I think you have more to say. I'd like to hear more about it. Thank you.
Well, I don't know how much more I have to say. Thank you for inviting me to expound. What I would say is God loves all his creatures. God loves cockroaches. God loves mosquitoes. God loves ticks. Well, I don't know. That was a theological problem that I think Augustine considered. Augustine believed in some prototypical form of evolution because he didn't believe that God would create vermin, but he believed that God created the processes by which vermin unfolded from the evolutionary process. I mean, he didn't have that vocabulary precisely. But I mean, I'm sort of reflecting on the Canticle of Daniel, where all creation praises the Lord. You know, running streams and bubbling fountains praise the Lord, and you know, snowy nights and rainy days praise the Lord, and so on and so forth. So all creation praises the Creator, and dinosaurs spectacularly so. So if we believe that God loves all creatures, great and small, that doesn't just apply to those currently living, but also of those gone before us. Yeah, all right.
Yes, thank you so much. That was a wonderful talk. I'm sure you all enjoyed it. So many good aspects. And so do come back again on the 12th and look for us on the website to find out what we'll be doing in the fall. We can't wait to figure it out either. So safe travel home, and thank you again for coming.